This is KGW News at noon.
This afternoon, fire investigators will try to enter what's left of the May Apartments in Southwest Portland to continue piecing together what started the massive fire that destroyed this building 1 week ago today. Thank you for joining us here for the news at noon. I'm Drew Carney. Investigators are expected to make what will be their first attempt at entering that building since last week's fire at 2 o'clock this afternoon. In the days since that fire at Southwest 14th and Taylor, investigators have only observed the building from the outside, while also flying drones inside to try and get a better idea of what happened. No people have gone inside since last Tuesday because of structural concerns. We have a crew covering today's attempt to enter the building, and we'll bring you that story coming up later this afternoon during our news at 4. We're also covering this house fire in Northeast Portland. It started a couple of hours ago, just after 10 o'clock this morning on the corner of Northeast 11th and Ainsworth. Fire crews were able to put out the flames and are now cutting holes in the roof to help with ventilation. Portland Fire is still asking people to avoid this area. Senate Republicans in Salem say they plan to continue their walkout up until the last day of the legislative session, which is roughly a month from now, on June 25th. Republican leader Tim Knope said GOP lawmakers will return on that final day of the session in order to pass bipartisan budget bills. Knope and fellow Senate Republicans have walked out over bills on abortion, gender-affirming care, and guns, calling them hyper-partisan. 10 Republican senators are now ineligible to run for re-election because they've racked up at least 10 unexcused absences this session. But Republicans also say they plan to challenge that new law in court. Meanwhile, Oregon Governor Tina Kotek and Senate President Rob Wagner say they have not ruled out the option of getting state police involved to force those senators back to work. All right, we'll take a break from today's news headlines to check in with Rod Hill in the Weather Center. Ron, what's happening there?
Well, cloudy, and your choice of either cool or comfortable, or maybe to you cool is comfortable. Anyway, that's what we have going on outside right now. We have clouds for the most part still holding along the beaches. Here's Schnuckwin's Casino Resort camera in Lincoln City. We've seen some breaks in the cloud cover in the valley. Kind of depends on where you are. If you look up here, you can see a little bit of blue, right? That's Stoller Family Vineyard State down in Dayton. It was actually a lot sunnier just about 30 minutes ago, so some varying conditions. Haven't seen much sun over downtown, and because of that, we're actually running cooler than yesterday. We're only at 59 degrees right now. It will take some sun breaks to get us up into the mid to upper 60s. Right now, I've got partly sunny skies developing, 68 degrees, still considered somewhat cool for this time of the year, and 64 at 8 o'clock. Everybody is currently dry out there. The 7-day forecast into the weekend, I made a couple of tweaks. I've also made a tweak to tomorrow's forecast. We'll have that 7-day coming up.
All right, Rod, thank you for that. We will get back to Rod here shortly, but right now, more of our local headlines this afternoon. Oregon State Police have identified the 7 people who were killed last week in a crash on I-5 near Albany. Their ages range from 30 to 60 years old, and they all lived in the Salem-Woodburn area. KGW's Catherine Cook talked to members of that community who are working to reach out to the victims' families.
7 people died in this crash on I-5 near Albany Thursday, and 4 were injured. Investigators say they were in this van returning home to families who now mourn their loss. On Monday, OSP released their names. They range in age from 30 to 60 years old and lived in the Salem-Woodburn area. The victims were all farm workers from Mexico, according to a statement from the Mexican consulate.
We were in shock and devastated, and so we knew, that we had to act.
Anthony Veliz is with Poder, Oregon's Latino leadership network. Over the weekend, he and other local leaders planned how they would help survivors and the victims' families. One resource they're offering is free emotional support. Veliz co-owns Oyen, a bilingual bicultural behavioral mental health clinic. Besides the victims' families, they're also helping former coworkers.
I mean, they're devastated, right? They don't know what to do. Obviously, shock, sorrow, grief, all the emotions. And what we're really there is to provide them someone to talk to and listen to and help them, even though it's so new, but through this grieving process.
Aware Food Bank in Woodburn is providing food to victims' families, and Velis says the Oregon Farm Bureau is working with the victim's employer to create a GoFundMe.
The beautiful thing is our community is a really giving community, and there are people just waiting to help. And we're trying to coordinate that and do it in a respectful way. On Friday, the man accused of causing the crash faced a Marion County judge. Police say 52-year-old Lincoln Smith of California was driving this semi-truck. He faces DUI and manslaughter charges. Witnesses told investigators that Smith had been swerving before veering off the road. The truck slammed into the victim's van, which had been parked on the shoulder. The force pushed the van into another semi-truck parked nearby. In court, the husband of one of the victims asked for justice.
There's no power that will be able to give me back my wife.
Teníamos planes juntos como familia.
We had plans together as a family.
In the wake of tragedy, Velis says this community is doing everything they can to help, though they know nothing they can offer.
We're just really just trying to hold them up,
Will ever be enough. Catherine Cook, KGW News.
We're also tracking a developing situation this afternoon in southeast Portland. Police armed with assault rifles and wearing protective gear are out in front of a house on southeast Boise Street near 80th Avenue. That's in the Foster Powell neighborhood. Earlier, they were using a loudspeaker to give orders to some of the people inside that house. Police tell us they got several calls overnight and responded to a shooting. They say a woman was taken to the hospital. There's no word, though, on her condition. Police also say this situation is likely a domestic dispute. We'll bring you any updates, both here on the air and online at KGW.com. A bill that would require Oregon schools to teach students about the dangers of fentanyl is headed to the governor's desk. The bill calls for an age-appropriate fentanyl curriculum that would be added to existing drug and alcohol classes in both middle and high schools. It also calls for educating students on the laws that provide immunity to people who report fentanyl use or seek treatment.
The drugs are there, and I do think it's really important for us to recognize the change in trends in drug and to be able to keep up with that and make sure that youth are armed with the information that they need.
This bill comes at a critical time. According to the numbers from Multnomah County's health department, opioid use among youth is dropping, but at the same time, overdoses are up. An Oregon community that has seen more than its fair share of setbacks over the last 3 years is ready for a comeback this summer. KGW's Joe Ranieri spent Monday at Detroit Lake, where things are looking up heading into Memorial Day weekend.
For marina managers at Detroit Lake,
the lake is full. We are fully operational. We have all our rentals in the water.
There is no sweeter sound this time of year than boats trolling the lake. And what's even sweeter is having the season open.
It means everything, because without a full lake, we don't have a season. And we can't open unless we have water. So it's when you don't have a full lake, it makes it real tough.
Lucas Lunsky manages Detroit Lake Marina. He says he was getting a little nervous about this season.
We left April 27th, weren't floating at all. And then we came back Monday, May 1st, and it was fully floating.
3 weeks ago, there was a lot of concern in Detroit Lake that there wouldn't even be a season because of the low lake levels. Now take a look at it. Lunsky says they got help from two things: the Army Corps of Engineers, who released some water downstream of the lake, and Mother Nature.
There's just so much snow around. I mean, it was snowing here in the middle of April, and then once it got a little warmer, it started all melting off, and I think that's what kind of saved us at the end.
The rise in water levels also helped this small town, who depend on tourism dollars and who are still rebuilding nearly 3 years after wildfires burned much of the town down. Joe Connor lost his barbecue restaurant during the Labor Day fires of 2020 and now works out of a food truck. He says things are slowly moving in the right direction.
The property values have at least tripled since the fire.
He says the town is slowly coming back, and you can see that with new construction that's taking shape.
Yeah, that whole development right there was in the plans to be built before the fire. So luckily they had started. So that was like the first big neighborhood to go in.
The first of many neighborhoods and new businesses residents are thankful to see. Joe Ranieri, KGW News.
A quick heads up about this weekend. The Portland Rose Festival will kick off this Memorial Day weekend with the opening of City Fair along the waterfront downtown. This is the annual event that features rides and carnival food and live performances. It actually runs for 3 weekends through Sunday, June 11th, and the Grand Floral Parade will happen the day before that on Saturday, June 10th.